Welcome back to the Inhabit podcast. We are going to talk about some current events today because some of the current events are overlapping with healthcare news and it's got people fired up. So I think it's worth a conversation today.
Yes. So the United Healthcare CEO has been murdered, and the suspect, Luigi Mangione, which I feel like I need to add an Italian accent when I say his name, he has been the suspected killer. So there's a lot of conspiracy theories on TikTok, which if you're not on TikTok, the TikTokers are such sleuths. I think what's been most interesting and what we wanted to talk about today was the media and the public's reaction to Luigi Mangione. There's been a lot of conversations around him really being like a vigilante character, and there's been a lot of cheering and celebrating and lifting him up as a hero figure. And I think that's been slightly confusing morally. What's your reaction to other people's reactions that you've seen?
The cynic in me and the part of me that knows that there is this dark underbelly to our quote unquote healthcare system, maybe sick care system is a more appropriate term for it. So that cynical side of me is not glad that somebody got murdered, but there are consequences for your actions. Karma catches up with you. You kind of get what's coming to you. I don't condone, and it's kind of crazy because you see this stuff in a movie and it's like entertainment. But this is real life. This guy was murdered in cold blood on the sidewalk at 6:45 in the morning. It could be the beginning of a slippery slope. Like, where does that take us? We've seen where things like rioting has taken us, and that's not great. So while I think I have some understanding of the people that are, cheering it on. I understand it, don't necessarily condone it, but I see where they're coming from.
There's been a number of things that the killer has been called, one being like a martyr, a savior, and it's really seen as this revolutionary movement and action that he's taken to really step out against the monopoly that is our healthcare system. Because in the United States, if you don't live in the United States, it's really an unfair and unfree market within the insurance companies. A lot of time when you go to the doctor, you don't know how much something is going to cost. They can recommend something, a prescription, a surgery, whatever, but you really don't know what it's going to cost until after you've received it. And then things are wildly expensive. And yeah, the insurance game, it's definitely dirty. And so there's a lot of resentment, especially for millionaires who are making so much money and profiting off of people's basically misery and sickness.
There have been so many claims that are denied and people are left with medical debt, or a full anesthesia for a procedure is not covered. Like, what are you supposed to do? Like, you only are under anesthesia for half of your procedure. And then that whole debacle with the AI that they've been using that is wildly inaccurate. And so a lot of people are saying, well, those are acts of violence against the people that they're supposed to be insuring. And when you look at it that way, it's, especially
Right.
of like the CEO, it sends a message. And I think we are at kind of like this time in the world where dramatic things are changing and happening. And I don't know. It's hard to say.
There's been people who I know who speak out a lot against anyone who goes against the norm when it comes to trusting experts and trusting science around things we've talked about, like vaccines or the legitimacy of doctors. But then they're also cheering for this action. I want to be like, well, you see the corruption exists then, but why does it only exist within context where it's the insurance? Like, the whole system is corrupt, not just that part.
Well, yeah, that's the tricky part of it, because the buck doesn't stop with the CEO. Even though he's at the top of that company, he's getting millions of dollars and that company is bringing in billions of dollars. He's not the top of the food chain, not even close. So,
Right.
I mean, it sends a message, but how
Yeah.
is it going to change anything? I don't know.
You have to think about other ways to fight back against the healthcare system. And I think that there are other ways to fight back against the healthcare system, obviously, other than murdering people. We could have become nurses or doctors if we wanted to, but then our hands are tied behind our back. What doctors are really trained to do is prescribe, diagnose, prescribe, and cut into people. The system is rigged against them and against the patients. And there are ways to fight back outside of murdering people, working outside of the system like you and I do, and doing research and helping people is one of those ways. To catch the people who have fallen through the cracks of the healthcare system, some things that I've seen that Luigi Mangione struggled with chronic illness like Lyme disease. And in one of his Twitter profile photos, he had a photo of an x-ray of his back, which had screws in it. And so I heard that he also had back pain. And so he might have been in and out of the system quite a bit, just like you and I have experienced working with doctors and the frustration that we've felt. And so I think that there are people who fall through the cracks and they don't have a place to turn. And so I think people like us, health coaches online, and people who get our online certifications are often called grifters or not taken seriously. I actually think that we're creating spaces for people who fall through the cracks of the broken healthcare system to turn to.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, even aside from us, we're seeing so many nurses and doctors and nurse practitioners that were a part of that mainstream medical system separating themselves from it and calling out all of these bad practices and going out on their own and educating people on these more holistic approaches because either they have gone through a personal health struggle and were not served by this system that they had dedicated their lives to, or they've had a loved one or seen people not served properly and started to ask questions. And curiosity is not a crime. Like being curious is a good thing because it means that you're interested and you want to dig a little bit deeper. It becomes muddy because so much of this stuff is online now. Are there grifters and charlatans out there? 100% there are. But you have to, you have to use your discernment. This is something that we've talked about before when it comes to being a consumer. And it goes to, any type of product or service that you're going to consume. You have to use your discernment and decide if this is somebody that's really going to serve your purpose and what your goals are. And if somebody is just simply trying to sell you a green juice, that might be a sign that they're not the person to work with. So you just have to try to weed out the good ones from the bad. And it's the same really in anything. Like you should say the same thing about doctors.
Doctors, healthcare. Yeah. There are people who do see it as a true calling and want to catch you when you fall and want to be there and help guide you and support you and help you heal. I think that our profession specifically gets categorized as illegitimate. It's been a little bit frustrating for me hearing so many people cheer on this action of revolting against the healthcare system. And he committed an act of murder when you and I are doing it in a different way that I feel like
Mhm.
is productive, but don't get that kind of response generally from the public. I also wanted to talk about the TikTok conspiracies because they're wild. Okay. There's two theories that came out after Luigi Mangione was suspected of being the killer after he was found in the McDonald's in Pennsylvania. So there is a theory that Luigi Mangione had this bigger, broader scope plan. So he had a YouTube account, and there was a YouTube video with a countdown of 60 seconds. And that's all it was. It was like a clock counting down from 60 seconds. And then at the end, it said, if you're seeing this, I've already been arrested. And apparently his YouTube was taken down. So Monopoly theory is that he has been plotting every single move he's made. There was a backpack that authorities found linked to the killer, and it was filled with Monopoly money. Then he went to a McDonald's in Pennsylvania where he was then called in by the workers of the McDonald's for suspicious behavior. And people believe is symbolic because the McDonald's McMillions Monopoly was a game that McDonald's played from 1987 to 2016. And because it was exploiting people, they ended it in 2016. And there's the board game of Monopoly was founded in Pennsylvania, where Luigi Mangione was arrested. And where he was arrested was Altoona, PA, which the Pennsylvania Railroad goes through, which is part of the board game Monopoly, and is symbolic of economic power, corporate influence, revolution. And then also he had a fake ID on him, and one of the addresses on one of the fake IDs he had was Sherman Place. And it's not a real address, but the Sherman Act of 1980 was the law that made the intent to create a monopoly illegal.
That's interesting because his family has all of the like nursing homes. And if I remember correctly from what I've read and heard, United Healthcare was starting to buy up his family's businesses.
He went to a private school and he was valedictorian of his high school and then went on to an Ivy League college. He was incredibly intelligent and incredibly wealthy, and his wealth actually came from healthcare. His family owned, like you said, I believe, nursing homes, and there's all these ties to his family's wealth and healthcare. And I don't know how it plays into like United Healthcare specifically, but it is interesting that his whole family comes from healthcare.
I thought that was like, the web, like the web thickens.
The other one is the 286 theory. So Luigi Mangione had 3 photos on his Twitter. One was a photo of him. One was a photo of Seth, the X-ray, like I mentioned. Another one was a Pokemon. So the Pokemon number is 286, and he had 286 posts on his Twitter. 286 is an insurance denial code. His arrest at the McDonald's took place 286 miles from the crime. And Proverbs 28:6 says, better is a poor man who walks in his integrity than a rich man who is in his crooked ways. So people are making all these connections to the number 286 and the Monopoly, and saying that basically this Luigi Mangione character is a genius and intentionally threaded all of these threads so that people would dig into this and find all that out. I don't know. I think it's probably more so coincidence, and there's probably a lot of things in life that have themes and numbers threaded through it. But if he did do it on purpose, I have to say that's some serious work.
Yeah. It's almost like there's too much for it to be a coincidence, but also like Altoona's 286 miles from New York, and you also happen to have like the Pennsylvania Railroad. They're like, that's a lot of coincidences.
It is a lot of coincidences. And then also you have to factor in when you play Monopoly, you also go to jail. Part of the game. So people are saying like, what's his next move? Because there's a get out of jail free card. So,
well, I mean, it's all pretty wild. I think that it sets a dangerous precedent because we don't need a bunch of vigilantes running around.
well, and that's the thing. That's what people are saying, that maybe we do. The lawsuits don't work against people because they just have so much money. They have this monopoly. They are so wealthy. They can get themselves out of trouble. It's not like the people's voices aren't being heard. Nothing's working. So people are saying that like resorting to violence is the only way. I don't necessarily agree with that, but I'm just saying these are the things that I've heard on this topic.
Yeah. Well, I mean, historically, when you look back in times of revolution, violence is a part of it, unfortunately. And it does, I mean, to a certain gosh, like, we are really hopeful because RFK is coming in as Health and Human Services Secretary, right? Like, we hope that he's gonna start to change a lot of this stuff, but there is just such a it's an establishment. Things have been established in a certain way, and, us little peons out here, like, it's really hard for us to affect change on a very high level. So at a certain point, it's like, okay, I've gone down this avenue, I've gone down this avenue, I've lobbied, I've talked to my senators, I've done this, I've done that. Then maybe it does seem like, okay, well, this is my last resort. I tried these other things and they didn't work. The system didn't work for me. So, I mean, again, like, I don't necessarily condone it. I do understand the thought process. And I think it's kind of interesting because our society has evolved so much in the past 150 years, like at such a rapid pace. So, things that maybe were a little bit more normal or expected in the past seem just outrageous to us now. But that's how things have changed in the past. And again, I'm not justifying it. I'm just saying that.
History repeats itself. I did hear that a jury can free a man if they believe that the crime was justified, even if it was illegal, if they all like agree that it was a justified action or something like that. I don't know. I'm not a lawyer, but there is some type of move that a jury can make together as the people to free him. So I'm
Mhm.
curious about who's going to even be able to be on that jury.
That's a good point.
But I mean, there's high profile cases all the time. I mean, it happens everywhere. So we'll see. But I wonder how it will play out.
I mean, I think they'll be pretty hard pressed to find somebody that hasn't heard about what happened and have an opinion on it.
I don't know. You and I pay attention. Not everyone pays attention as much as you and I. Like,
That's true.
there's a lot of people who don't. I put a note out this week on my Instagram. How informed are we about these drones? And there was 20% of people was like, I don't know what you're talking about. There's a number of people who have no clue.
Okay. That's true. Well,
We'll
I
see.
mean, do we want to see Luigi behind bars or not? I guess that's the question.
I mean, I think that it's the law. I think he has to be behind bars, in my opinion.
I think that he took that action knowing that it was a possibility. When I first heard about it, it still seems calculated, but it seemed more like this was like a hit for hire type situation and this guy was just going to vanish into the night.
Yeah.
But to me, it almost seems like he knew he was going, like he went to that McDonald's on purpose and he knew he was going to be apprehended. So I think he knew that going to jail, like you said, it's Monopoly, you play the game, you go to jail. I think that he knew that that was what was going to happen to him.
If he even did it, is
That's
it
also true.
possible that
I'm
it
a little
wasn't
bit
him?
skeptical. Some of these details just seem like why, if he ditched his backpack, how did he have his backpack? Why would he have a weapon with him? Why,
Or he
some of the
had two
things to me seem,
or he had two backpacks. But then again, it's if these details are intentional and there is a Monopoly game being played, it's very possible that he's a cover
Mhm,
in all of this. And the person who actually did it is getting away, and the evidence will show that he has some type of
mhm,
alibi elsewhere.
mhm. Yeah, that was actually something that crossed my mind because I was like, something just doesn't add up here? So I think that there are going to be more details revealed, hopefully, for, inquiring minds want to know.
It's going to take a little while. The conspiracy theories are just for fun, but there is a foundational truth here being laid out that there's a lot of corruption in the system. And I think that you and I bring a lot of that to light when we hop on these podcasts and talk about it. And so that was something that I really wanted to cover.
Yeah, I think it's super interesting. And if anybody wants to leave their theories in the comments, we would love to read them.
Yeah, let us know what we're missing. What are the holes in our story?
Yes, to listen on any of the conspiracies that we missed on this topic. Well, we would be remiss if we didn't mention that we are running our reset starting on January 6th. So if you are ready to take control of your health, to have a transformation and make it stick, this is the program for you. And we're going to leave the link in the show notes. It's a 10-week group program. You have access to both of us and the accountability of a group. There is a ton of resources. I've been going through the program and there is just so much good stuff for you. So we really hope that you decide to join us if that is, on your vision board for 2025. And yeah, we'll talk to you next week.